to yourself, and we'll take a break at the time, and then we'll crack on again after the afternoon. So it's actually a full-on busy day. Any apologies noted?
Yeah, we've got HFO Dean Lauder and Kate Harvard from Audit.
Thank you. Any additional declarations of interest other than those already reported to the Company Secretary? Announcements. Couple of announcements. First one is Women in Fire Service. We had a very successful event for Women in Fire Service Wales in 2024, and we're looking to do it again in October 2025. Planning is underway and details will be promulgated. The whole time recruits course, the latest one, is taking place at Cowgate, and the pass out is the 16th of April. Taking Care of Behaviours programme is being launched in April, and the training sessions will focus on upskilling employees on a range of behaviours whilst providing guidance to everyone on how they can be an upstander rather than a bystander for all sorts of behaviours that cause harm, inequality and prejudice. We were just briefing Welsh Government on that. That's what I really think in terms of the academy. In terms of the academy, we submitted a paper which was very late notice. Appreciate we had discussed about no late notice papers, but the one that we just submitted to Welsh Government, Alison, was really well received, and they really liked it. They were really happy with it, and we explained that it's going live again end of April, 20th of April, I think is the date. So that's landed really well with Welsh Government, and thanks to everyone who's worked behind it to get that going. The National Fire Day Games, we had a briefing yesterday, 25 to 27 July, at Cardiff Met University. There's up to 300 young people likely to be there. It's going to be quite a spectacle. I think we're really looking forward to that. I think it's we're sending out invites on behalf of the commissions and the brigade to the Cabinet Secretary and the First Minister. I think the initial view was that the Cabinet Secretary is most likely to attend. First Minister will again depend on diaries. So there we are. And my last announcement is that I'm sure we're probably all know that this is technically Gabby's last Board of Commissioners meeting. We're here for a few more weeks, but on behalf of the commissioners, on behalf of this board, we'd like to thank you for having stepped up into the role. You've done a fabulous job. You've kept us really well briefed, kept us legal, decent, and honest, which is the role of the board. Notwithstanding, but your contribution is really appreciated, and from this point, we wish you all the best in the addition.
Thank you. And I even buy you a pen.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
They do teddy bears for House of Lords.
They do.
That's much more
expensive.
I'll chip in.
You're fine.
Unless you prefer the pen.
It's a tough one, to be honest.
Right, okay. Thanks for that. Moving on to item 4 on the agenda, the minutes of the Board of Commissioners held on the 30th of February. If we take accuracy first, bear in mind there are a considerable number of pages. So in terms of the paper 5 in the bundle, page 1 of the report, or the minutes rather, page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And take accuracy for the subsequent paper, which is the minutes of the local pension board, page 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Minutes of the people committee of the 20th of November, page 1, 2, 3, 4. We then go to the item 5 on the agenda, matters arising. First one is on the agenda for today. Everyone's yeah, we have those On the agenda, we'll then closed. Yes. The pay policy statement, item 6.1. Gemma, you're going to talk to us?
I will do this one.
Oh, you're talking.
Yeah.
Councillor Jane Baker.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Chair. So as commissioners will be aware, the service is required under the Localism Bill 2010 to publish its policy statement on an annual basis. This is a forward-looking document, so the document before you covers the year 2025-26. It sets out a clear pay policy position on all things related to pay. The policy statement has been updated, so I've preempted, if you don't mind, the discussion around market supplements. So on page 41 of the bundle, paragraph 14, I've inserted reference there to the introduction of market supplements for retention and recruitment. What I would like to flag with commissioners is that the pay rates in the document are reflective of the last uplift. So the last nationally agreed pay agreement, which was dated 2024. So what I will have to do is when the pay agreements for 2025 are negotiated and agreed nationally, I will need to update the document to reflect the new rates of pay. The final thing, just by way of kind of an introduction, this paper was discussed at People Committee and agreed. So I just flag that with Board of Commissioners so they are aware that this has been subject to another discussion by People Committee. And that's as much as I wanted to say.
Right. I'd like to know, if not, we mentioned yesterday was there will always be a lag because there's a requirement to report at the end of March. The pay discussions can be ongoing, and that will be a feature going forward. This is something we forget. Are there any comments from Kirsty?
I just wonder, given what Alison just said, that it's already received scrutiny at the People Committee, whether the People Committee had any concerns arising that the board would need to be aware of, or were they committee content with
I was
that?
content on this particular thing.
Thank you.
It's a routine reporting.
Having said all that, can I ask a couple of questions? Firstly, around, I think they're linked, but I'm always very aware that temporary acting and honorarium can be subject to, if they're used incorrectly, a perception of bias and unfairness. What's the structure and scrutiny behind them, just to make sure that we're being very transparent? And I say that from a previous experience when we looked at honorarium disproportionately paid to one gender over another. So that was question one. And just anything else developing in the future, Alison, that you started to think about, or around pay and risks, or things that we may want to know that will go through People Committee more generally?
Yeah, thank you, Carl. So in terms of honorariums and temporary promotions, the Morris report recommended that we review those on a regular basis. So we undertook a review around 6 months ago. We made some decisions around rationalising. We looked at why people are still on temporary promotion. So there was discussion and outcomes there. We are currently going through that same exercise. So we said that we would do that every 6 months, just to keep an eye on what's happening across the service. Obviously, with the stabilisation of the structure at the top, that's starting now to filter down, and we are now seeing more permanent roles being filled. So that will reduce the number of temporary promotions that we've got on the stocks. I think in terms of that scrutiny, we haven't got a formal temporary promotion procedure. So that is something that we are preparing. So we have a first draft of that. That will be going through scrutiny and consultation with the unions, because I'm aware sort of in other organisations there's a very clear set of criteria around, you know, how do you award temporary promotion? Is it senior most suitable? Is it skill based? So that's the work that we're doing at the moment. So there will be a policy that will go live in due course once we've done all the consultation around it. So that will make things more transparent for us going forward. On the pay front, I think we have been in quite a challenging position in terms of recruitment. I think the market supplement is now starting to gain some traction in terms of recruitment and the recruiting levels. We are seeing, so for example, in the finance team, I think we made an offer.
Yes,
Made an offer, so we're starting to gain some traction in terms of applicants, and looking at the vacancies that we've got live at the moment, we are starting to see the numbers increasing. So I think there's that bit, so keeping an eye on the recruitment side, and then just seeing what happens pay this year. I think I'm hearing that sort of 3 to 4% around sort of government looks at around a figure that's being offered. I haven't seen any insights on NJC negotiations at present, so it is one to watch, I think, going forward.
Chief.
Very quick one on promotions. There is a survey out for promotions. So for the people in the room and also on the recording, there's an opportunity there for everyone in our organisation to contribute to that. And so please pass that out and cascade.
Okay, anything else? Okay, right, thank you. Moving on then, gender pay gap. Gemma.
To Alison, we've got this thing, this would, they would go through people committee. And so Commissioner will know that under the Equality Act 2010, any employer with over 15 employees must report specific gender pay gap data annually. There are differences in reporting requirements between England and Wales, so the Welsh approach is more holistic, embedding reporting and strategy within the broader EDI and wellbeing strategies. There is brief discussion, it's page 66.2. The data that feeds the gender pay gap reporting is taken as a snapshot at the 31st of March. So the data for this report is from the 31st of March 2024. Salary calculations are based on net earnings and they take into consideration a number of things, including salary allowances, honorariums and salary sacrifice payments. The accepted primary method of determining gender pay gap is calculating the difference between the mean or average pay of men and women in the organisation. The data of this report evidences a continued reduction in the mean gender pay gap figure. So you see that on in Appendix 1, which is page 77 of the document, page 5 of the report itself. The figures that are in brackets there are the previous year's figures for comparison. There can be several reasons for the continued decrease, including we've had an increasing number of women employed in the service. There are now 17.33% of contracts with women as opposed to 16.66 the previous years. So there's a slight increase. Also, we're starting to see the effects of initiatives like the Workouts with the Watch, the female firefighter initiatives. There's being gradual improvement of the environment across the service of female employees with unconscious bias training, blind sifting for recruitment, new learning pathways, and also menopause and menstruation procedures and toolkits. So there's sound for welfare packs on all stages and some vehicles going on. There are lots of other smaller things that have contributed to that. Continued efforts to support and achieve improved gender balance in the service include the support and promotion of fire angels, with a recent expedition. One of them is a South Wales Fire Service employee, opening recruitment to all levels to external candidates, enhanced maternity benefit offering, so we now offer 52 weeks full pay, and shortly the introduction of agile working. We'll hopefully increase that as well. Just as a general statement, the existence of a gender pay gap is found in varying degrees across the UK economy. Men are more likely than women to be in senior roles in general, and also technical and IT roles, which usually attract higher salaries than other roles at the same level of seniority. And women are still more likely in society than men to have career breaks, for example, having family. The pattern of male employees, more male employees in senior roles is reflected in the service, and in the report on page 78 you can see that in the quartiles. Compared to family group fire and rescue services, South Wales is roughly in the middle of the range based on the data from this report. Any from me on that? Any questions?
Open it up to comments, observations, questions, please.
Very quick one for me. I really want us to move out on this, and so I really welcome the points in 2.6, 2.7, and 2.8 paragraph there. Really important news for us, and I just would like to express that I'd like everybody to be on board with this, so that we can do the best we possibly can to decrease this gender pay gap.
Okay.
Thank you very much. This is a very comprehensive paper with lots of important data and lots of food for thought for us. I think a point that you made just now is really opposite, that, you know, we are where we are with this, and we're there, you know, with the general kind of, you know, workplace population. But the changes that we are making and we will continue to make to, you know, support what the chief has just said, should put us in a better position than we've been historically. So as long as we're moving forward and we're moving in the right direction, and we've got a direction to travel, and we've got those targets to hit, then, you know, that's much, much a better place than we were in the past.
I agree. And I can see tentatively forecasting going forward that we should see another improvement in the next report.
That's good to hear. Thank you. Diolch yn fawr.
Jim, I think what's really helpful, Jim, and thank you for the context. I'm really positive to see the picture. I suppose, building on your point of view, it's how ambitious we want to be, and then how radical do we want to get with our initiatives, isn't it? Because we could be more radical around positive action if we wanted to be, for example, especially around areas that we are underrepresented and continue to be underrepresented. And there are some challenges with that and some positives around that. And I suppose it's that conversation shift, isn't it, really, of you know, if we want to make a seismic shift, are the initiatives going to deliver that, or will they be piecemeal, or do we want to do something that is more ambitious and potentially more risky around it?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think the initiatives that we've got in place, we've had, and we are striving to put forward, they are more long term probably in their effects. But you're right. The decision needs to be made if we want to take some risks. There is a potential then to make larger strides.
Testing.
I think the point is well made about, I wouldn't describe them as risks, I'd say radical. How radical and how progressive do we want to be? We know that we're currently living in a climate which is probably swinging against actually organisations taking that kind of action.
Yes.
So I think what's really important is explaining why it makes us a better service. Why taking that action would actually allow us to do our job even better than we're doing it now. So it's not just for the sake of the figures looking good, but we know, if we are going to, radically change our higher risk, and we're sending people into people's homes, our population might want to see a more diverse workforce coming through into their house to talk to them about fire safety in their house. But actually, we may be able to get into more homes in different places,
Yes.
for more diverse communities if our workforce is more diverse. And therefore, it's not simply about the figures, it's taking those radical or more progressive steps that actually deliver a better service to the public, and being able to tell that story to our own staff, our potential staff, and the community that we serve.
Okay, so taking on board that, perhaps Alison, I think we'll test the water on how radical we want to be by bringing a range of options or proposals. We'll see how that lands totally taken. Okay. Anything else on that? No. Moving on then to 6.3, and this was discussed. This was discussed at the committee yesterday.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. So in December, we brought a report on market supplements to support our recruitment challenges, and commissioners asked for a quick piece of work to do the same for our retention challenges. So this report sets that proposal into motion. I've used the same technical notes that the LTA issued on the support in market supplements. So this is grounded in existing policy. What I would say in terms of the approach itself, and it sort of says quite clearly in the report that we're not in a game of giving money out to people if they say, I am going to leave or I'm looking for another job. This is about taking a decision when an individual has an employment offer, so a letter in their hands from another employer, and then that triggers a discussion with the heads of service. So I'm just making that point clear so that everyone, including colleagues, are clear that this is not about a conversation about I may look to leave. This is when somebody has looked and got another offer. And then that triggers a sequence of events around the application, the business case being generated. Conversation as well around the job level. So is it graded properly? So a little look at that. The other thing that I would flag is from an equal pay perspective, and this is a word of caution, where there's a bucket post, so there's more people than one in a role. If we decide that there's a retention pay due, that would apply to everyone in that bucket. So if we've got 3 people doing the same job, they would all receive the payment. So we need to be very careful, and this does need to be very tightly governed. And I'm looking at my governance colleagues to kind of support on this.
Question.
Thank you so much, Alison, for the paper and the clarification. I think it is right to look not just at recruitment, but also at retention. But I think what would be really necessary as well is in preparing those cases to be looked at, we're looking at the ability to replace the market as well, aren't we? So it isn't an automatic right just because you're leaving. You may be leaving in a job which will leave us massively exposed, and we know that it will be difficult to recruit to, or you may be moving on into a role where actually we have a reasonable level of confidence that recruitment can come in. I think it's really important to recognise, that these have to be seen in the context of the wider job market and the availability of people to recruit. So this is not about saying everybody is going to stay here forever. It's about critical roles which we know will be potentially very challenging to recruit in. Retention is important, but also rotation of staff is also really important for the health of an organisation. So this isn't about putting us in amber, so to speak, and that nobody will ever leave.
We've also discussed about how it's important that this is the first application, so to send a signal out to how it's intended to be applied rather than a self-ratcheting thing which just adds to pay increases. Okay, so we're happy to Right.
Thank you.
Moving on then to item 6.4 on the strategic improvement plan. Dominic,
I think that's down against me.
oh, sorry, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you, Commissioners. So the purpose of this report is to approve the publication of the service's new strategic improvement plan, okay, which ran from 2025 to 2040. Commissioners will be aware of the requirement to publish the first stage of the annual improvement plan by the statutory deadline of March 31st, in accordance with the requirements of the Local Government Wales Measure 2009. It is important to note, your commissioners will notice this plan sees the organisation move away from the previous 10-year 2020 to 2030 plan. So I think the last plan we've approved in March was year 5 of the 2020 to 2030 plan. We'll be moved towards a new 15-year longer-term strategic improvement plan, and that's to reflect the wholesale transformation and change that will improve performance across this. So, like I said, with all the recommendations and all the improvements that are planned, it was right to move into a brand new stage of time with the plan. So the plan sets out what we believe in the longer term community and organisational challenges, and they're classed as our strategic themes. And they do highlight, this plan highlights the shorter term service improvements. So under the Act, we do have to annually update the strategic our annual improvement objectives to support those longer term strategic themes. And the document will also outline how these objectives support the achievement of the wellbeing goals as part of the Wellbeing and Future Generations Wales Act 2015. So every one of our strategic themes has been cross-mapped to which of the 7 wellbeing goals they contribute to And that mapping does occur once we get then to action plan level, so we can really give a good account of how we are contributing to that act. The themes and objectives have been drafted considering numerous sources of information, and I think this was the key to capture it in one document. So we've obviously had there have been meetings with yourselves as commissioners in terms of obviously the committee meetings and your priorities in terms of your terms of reference. The senior leadership team, we've obviously been in meetings with the teams looking at departmental risk and departmental priorities. The plan should capture the recommendations made in the Morris report, the thematic reviews, looked at information gathered from the public and our stakeholders during the statutory 12-week consultation. So again, like I said, between October and January, we did go out, commissioners were presented a report in January around the views of the public and of stakeholders. That's all incorporated into the plan. Obviously, the projects identified as part of the Step Forward Transformation and Change Programme, and research undertaken against the NFCC standards and frameworks and the weighted outcomes of the HMI CFRF review of the service, which was undertaken at the end of 2024. So we've taken this year in particular, there was a lot of information available, a lot of improvements, a lot of recommendations. So this plan essentially has been drafted to make sure, as the vehicle really, to make sure that we can support us on that transformational change journey. I think hopefully the key improvements, or key developments since the plan you'll have seen in October, I hope commissioners do notice the plan is more concise. So I think we took that feedback on board, because I think what we've done as well with a lot of the reviewing, what we've done and improving it was when we looked at the version of the plans people were reading in October, November, December. So it was part of the questionnaire. People were reading what was a quick read version of the plan, and obviously then that fuller, more detailed version of the plan was going largely unread. So the challenge put back to the team really was to be more concise, to be a lot more clear with what we needed to do and make it much more accessible to the public. What I was pleased with that then is because obviously now the actual version is more concise, we've been able to move out on an easy read version. So rather than have a large detailed version, then a quick read version, we've been able to actually streamline the main version to be more aligned to what quick read used to be, cutting off any fat. Then we've been able to actually look at an easy read version. So they're all being developed as we speak. So I think the challenge here is we've got a full plan, a Welsh version of the plan. We then got an easy read and a Welsh version of the easy read. Obviously, hopefully with your approval today, we can finalise the content, sign the plan off, and the plan will be ready for final publication then on the 31st of March. And the easy read version has gone through a rigorous self-assessment template that was provided by Learning Disability Wales, and they have kindly offered to look at our plan as well once it's complete, to give us that final reassurance that it is compliant. Well, I am very confident that it is. So, like I said, this is the first year of the 2025 to 2040 plan. So today was just to try and get your approval for that. And I have provided the latest draft only this morning, because it is still being worked on as we speak, to make sure it's ready for Monday. But I won't have to take any questions.
I guess appreciate that you're right up against deadlines. I noticed that on page 126 of the money mentions HMI's report coming in. So it's a question of timing. This is going to be published. We're probably going to get the HMI report published in May. Then we've got slides of some of the things. And there's a point in page 9 of the on the evaluation conclusion says, plan provides the review of services high-level strategic priorities for the year. We're doing some work on now, which may be adjusted. Does that mean that we would be able to adjust it electronically in terms of the plan that we get on that intranet site, as opposed to paper copies will be extant?
They can be. I think looking at the plan, certainly we do hope the strategic themes as they are now, I mean, due to the amount of research that's gone in, we do hope they are the vehicle that any amendments we do have can actually can be slotted in quite seamlessly. I think the HMI conversations and certainly the themes of the other things were being asked, and even some of that original feedback we provided based on some of those meetings, hopefully we'll be able to have incorporated any major things in there, but any major analysis can be made electronic.
Okay, great. Jake?
So in the development of this, there was a timeline to meet, but as this was being developed in parallel, we're developing the new strategy. The HMI stuff has just come in, and it's only in draft format, verbally transmitted to us at the moment. So overall, this has been knitted together, I think, actually pretty well with the strategic the big strategy that lies over the top of it. Strategic things, we've already been checking through some of the things with HMI to make sure that the strategy aligns as well. So there is alignment, but it'll need to be refined in due course.
Comments, observations, questions? Dominic?
Yeah, so I think the chief's comments cover that point. I just wanted to thank Wayne and the planning, performance and risk team for putting this together. They've had to remain pretty agile and get it done under some pretty strict timelines with all that consistent change that we've put in place. We have utilised all of our HMI CFRS pre-assessment and self-assessment to feed into that process, and we very purposely restructured it to allow us to be able to give our directors a lot more clarity and anonymity and responsibility to be able to deliver their service areas. So the strategy will be able to give us improvement a lot more consistently. So they've took a very direct and conscious approach to that change process, and that's meant that Wayne's team has had to work really hard under some pressure timelines to get that done.
Thank you. Actually, thank you for the effort that could be passed to your team.
Just my obviously I'm the only one in the commission that's got the kind of latest version, so I've just been skipping through. I think it looks very different, and that's no bad thing. I think when you look at compared to last year to this year, that cutting down, focus on the key area feels really positive, which is good. It is good to see the strategy, vision, mission in there, because I think it feels important as well. So I think it'll keep evolving. There are other things that are going to come in this year, aren't they? That inevitably will kind of make us tweak and change. But I think your team's done a really good job of kind of collecting what was there at the start. So well done.
Can I just add, sorry, the thanks to the graphic design team and the Welsh language translators as well, Dave. I know the step-by-step process. So yeah, the design team and the Welsh language team have been fantastic here as well.
Okay.
No, just to answer, it is important that we can add and amend. This, I echo everyone else's thanks, and I particularly like the clarity, because that was one of my issues from last time. That if we need to add amend in the light of the HMI, then that's needs to be recognised.
Moving on to 6.5, someone tipped out and you are put in. So Matt, over to you. Is this person no longer with you?
Well, that is, but
Did you tip out?
no, that's fine.
Mine's not Tipex, so
So, good morning, Commissioners. Thank you. So I'll give you an overview of the provisional strategic performance indicator projections for 25-26. And I'll ask, obviously, as part of this, the Commissioners approved delegation to the Assistant Chief Fire Officer to review quarter 4 of 24-25 data and the plan reduction strategies and refine projections if necessary. And the Commissioners approved the publication of the projections onto the South Wales Fire and Rescue Service internet site following this. So as you can be aware, Commissioners, that our strategic performance indicator projections are 7 strategic performance indicators. There are 4 incident-based indicators, 2 fatality injury indicators, and 1 effective response indicator. And this is predominantly made up of 9 months worth of data of 24-25, actual incident data, and further 5 years historical data to provide a baseline projection going forward as we are. So the positive elements of this is the number of fires detected in 24-25 is currently predicted to be lower than that number intended during the previous years. So that is certainly a positive prediction from ourselves then, with the provisional projection of 25-26 sitting at the region of 5,320 incidents. Obviously, the number of predictions for the false alarms attended 24-25, that prediction has been calculated, and obviously we will need that quarter 4 prediction to give us that effective baseline going forward. But we know the work that Area Manager Wyatt and his team has done is already starting to yield significant reductions within our AFAs across South Wales, and the likelihood is that the project continues, we should see that reduction changing as well. So the provisional projection for AFAs in 25-26 is 6,741. However, that is based on historical data, which we know is high. So we know that we're expecting that data to change going forward with the current AFA policies as well. So the number of road traffic collisions attended again in 25-26, that is projected to be higher than the number attended during the previous years. But I have some data I'll touch on going forward with you regarding that. While the incidents attended is higher, the casualty rate and extrications are lower. So that is a positive part for us, which we're seeing probably with the transition of modern vehicles. We're not extricating people so much. People are being attending incidents, but they're out on our attendance as part of it. So the number of special service calls attended in 24-25 as well is currently predicted to be similar as part of that. And then the provisional projection for 25-26 is set at 3,074. The deaths and injuries as a result of fire in 24-25 is currently predicted to be higher than the number recorded in the previous years. And that's, as we've seen, the tragic incidents we've dealt with over the past quarter. And again, that's encompassed into it. The percentage of dwelling fires confined to the room of origin, that percentage is currently predicted to be higher, but that this is going to be our first year that this key performance indicator will form a metric for us to record. But we know based on the information and the thematic reviews being undertaken that there's some good work going on with that, and especially the 85% contained to the room of origin. I'll just touch on some parts there with the, like I said, with the AFAs themselves. That will be reviewed at the end of the financial year, and that projection will be readjusted then to make amendments for the work that's been carried out. The RTCs is higher, but the lower severity, and this is basically that there was 90% of incidents we attended where no actual incidents grew. 44%, casualty figures fallen in Q1 to Q3 with fewer than 25% fatalities, and there's 21% reduction in injuries as well, which is what we've seen. And again, 12.5% fewer extrications or release from us. So while we are still attending incidents, the severity is certainly lower, positive. And I think that's certainly down to vehicle technology and education. But also tying this then is what I've got here then is 30 to 20 data. So the 30 to 20 data for this period of time over the next 12 months, past 12 months, from Gwent and South Wales Police, there's 183 were seriously injured, so it's 14% lower than the same period of time last year. And there's a 21% reduction in slight injuries in that period of time last year. And our data is showing that there's one fewer fatality based on that period of time in the same comparative last year. 160 were seriously injured, so it's an 11% reduction for us as an FRS recording that, a 23% reduction of slight injuries. So what we can see is that the 30 to 20 is having a significant difference in injuries, and even when we talk a significant one less fatality is a success as part of that. So that for us is a success of working with our partners as part of it as well. And what we also monitor with that as well as the impact on our on-call staff. So we monitor that impact on their turn-in times, and we're not seeing significant impact when we place against data such as that, what that means to our communities going forward. Part of it then. So also as well now we're seeing the special service calls and the incidents, and they have fallen. And one of the things that we've done as an organisation, which certainly benefit this, is embed the duty group manager into control Monday to Friday during the key hours of operation. So the duty group manager is able to support control with challenging as part of that. But that's also seen other benefits where we've seen flooding and the increase in wildfire going forward as well. But again, this total will be revised following the end of year information then as part of it. And then that just leads us then in, obviously into the deaths and injuries. There's a lot of work going on with that to understand what's occurred, certainly over the last quarter, the tragedies we've seen over the last quarter. I know Area Manager Wyatt has pulled together a special project team that's addressing this with the data and key partnerships that we can get into. And along with that, an Operation Reset will certainly be focusing the activities around targeted risk reduction activity with the data that's given. And again, as they contain to the room of origin, that's predicted to sit 85%, but this is the first time we've utilised this KPI this year. And again, that's the learning we've taken from the thematic reviews and our training tactics going forward, and then the operational effectiveness. So we will continue to add that within to the data going forward, ready for publication. That's the brief overview. More than happy to take questions.
Sorry, that's fine, Jen.
I
know she doesn't like these.
We haven't got glasses on, so it's got safety.
Sorry. Matt, I think you have tried to explain why the AFA looks like it's going in the wrong direction, because the stats, but I think given that this is a public forum and that's been an area of concern, it might be worthwhile just spelling it out again, because the methodology, the way we've done the methodology, we haven't been able to at this stage, have we, incorporate the data following the change in policy. So talk us through the delegation that you're asking for today from commissioners and from the board, is that we would delegate to yourself and Dean Roder the opportunity to review some of this in a few months' time, yes?
Yes, that's correct.
And then you would change potentially the predictions as a result of that review when more up-to-date data became available.
Yeah, that's correct. So we'd almost want this to almost sit as a live document with the data that's going to come from Q4 and going forward, allowing us to update this. We will certainly have predictions around the automatic fire alarms, whereas we are in the phased approach of that as well. And as that phase is moved forward, it's highly probable that we will see the reduction in the number of automatic fire alarms we'd attend in. And I'll ask today is obviously that you're comfortable with us to amend that going forward.
And can I just say, I'm very pleased to see Room of Origin being put in.
Yes.
That's really
Yes.
a positive addition. I think that's really helpful, and it would be great to be able, and I know that the intention is to keep us updated on the learning from the fatalities.
Yes.
And can I just say, at our meeting earlier this morning with Welsh Government, we did hear some very positive anecdotal feedback regarding the support that's been made available to crews who've attended those fatal incidents. So very positive about the support that a new recruit, so new to the service, first time that they've had to engage in fatal fires, about how impressed that individual and their families have been with the support that has been made available to them.
Yes.
The first time they've had to engage in such difficult work. So I just wanted to let you know that that's been reported back to us positively this morning, and I think deserves some recognition. So I know that you guys have a lot of those incidents to deal with, but that the support that you've been able to give crews has been welcomed and noted and passed on. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just a couple of things, Matt, more broadly. I suppose the RTC severity one is an interesting one, isn't it? A bit like automatic fire alarm.
Yeah.
Are we going to the right calls? If the severity is dropping, and I suppose it's a question really around that, isn't it? Because we have a role,
Yes.
but are we being used in the right role at those RTCs? So that there was a query around that one, around the data and what that could be telling us over the next 12 months. If that severity is dropping, and actually are we going to the right RTCs, or are we just being used as a resource? So there's a query around that one, Matt, and if you've got any data on that one, you need to think about that one. There's probably more, I'm going to let's talk record here, Chief, around the performance data that we've got. And is it broad enough, deep enough as our mission changes going forward? And an ever more complex organisation, you know, the data that we're reporting at the moment is getting broader. But is it broad enough? Is it wide enough? Is it giving us the KPIs that we need going for the next 12 months, next 2 years, 3 years, to kind of ask the question of the organisation of how we work? Query question for that one. And then the final one, I do apologise. Are we able to understand the impact that we're having around some of these incidents of what are we doing, or is it just startup changes that are making a difference? Because there is a bit around prevention and the work we're doing around that one, and then there's a bit around response, isn't it? Really around actually we can demonstrate the impact we're having around some of these. It's just society has moved on, and I go back to my old world and look at car theft. Car theft plummeted dramatically. What's that to do with the police? Probably not really. If it's to do with it's much more difficult to steal cars and much more difficult to steal stuff out of cars because of security moving on.
Mm.
And it's a different analogy, but if you know what I mean around actually, what can we really say? We've made a difference. Actually, no, the world has just changed around that. So a few things for you, Matt. I don't want to put it on the spot.
Just to add to the fire anecdotes on that, the derelict car fires reduced, not because we was getting better at them, the price of oil and steel changed. And so there are different economic factors which drive some of these stats. And why I'm picking up those, I think this report is based on the reporting to our government. So that's why no, we need our own set of indicators to be able to have much wider to target how we're going to manage performance. And I like to see the fact that the injuries and fatalities are separated out, because you could have one go up, the other go down,
Yes.
you're at the same number. But we have managed to look at the detail on that and get into the detail on it in regards to those fatals. And so there's a task group. And I'll take something up with you outside the meeting when we come to that. Most of these things are preventable, aren't they? I mean, like, even with the grass fires, there's controlled burning and all sorts of things.
Yes.
Do we have a greater enhanced approach because we know that grass fire season is coming? We're going to get. Do we still do the controlled burning?
Yes, so we still support the control burns, working with the Strategic Arts Reduction Board and working with the land management groups, etc. across Wales. That still is supported through Welsh Government as part of that. But again, that season ends then. A lot of things you see is obviously elements of illegal burning of landowners outside of that period, because sometimes obviously the applications haven't been done as part of it. Now, risk reduction activity within the service is certainly front loaded as those periods of time peak and trough as we see it as we're coming into these periods now. A lot of education, school visits, the pantomimes, the stations, etc. So the elements the sitting there. What we are dealing with right now is almost a quiet wildfire season last year, I hate to say. So land management itself, it didn't naturally manage its land, and with obviously a large number of land management with agriculture moving away from that element, we're not seeing so many lands on the hill, so many animals on the hillsides that's naturally grazing. So a lot of these areas are areas that haven't been grazed for probably a period of even 2 years. So they're now being burned off, which is highly probable they are deliberate. But again, there are elements of accidental in the lower periods as well. So I know our risk reduction teams are working effectively with that, but we are certainly driven by the weather, the conditions.
Yeah.
But what we're doing as a service now is pre-posturing a weekly briefing of the wildfires, so looking at the wider bit of the impact and ensuring that we're resourced to meet that demand, but also delivering the rest of our service to the communities of South Wales as well as part of it. Yeah, so obviously, Commissioner, as part of that, yeah, certainly, I think you're 100% correct. I think a lot of the stuff is we need to do a deeper dive into this, and I'll pick that up outside you with Wayne regarding the stats that we record as a service that can drive how we deliver our strategies. But what we are looking at here is obviously a 5% increase overall for the incidents we've attended, with a 9% increase in those injuries. And the key bit is the fact of we are certainly not extricating people more. The challenges we have, and I think it's down to exactly what you said, the modern technologies of vehicles now. People are out when we arrive in. The challenge we have is people reporting that. So that's either going through the police or it's coming direct to us because someone is driving past an incident and they're following us immediately. The other challenges we have is the corridor of the M4 as part of that. So there could be someone that's from Smiths travelling down through that corridor and that accident's occurring as part of it. If it doesn't, Commissioner. And then that individual doesn't reside in South Wales as part of it in those hotspots where we've seen the reduction of 50 miles an hour, but it's certainly down to, there's no doubt about it. I think there's a lot of education that's gone on by crews, our risk reduction, our partners in reducing that. But I think a lot of this is driven by the technology now of vehicles, and even down to the points of where we're starting to see the phones automatically contacting emergency services when you've had an impact.
Yeah.
And I think that's another element where it's automatically going through to the centre, basically deploying assets straight away to the scene. So it's, but what I'll do is I'll look at this with Wayne outside of it to see how better picture we can capture, certainly around even makes, models of vehicles, and we will have that data because it would have been captured in the IRS report and around the elements of that. But it's certainly the positive bit is the impact that 20 to 30 is having, but also vehicle technology is clearly making a difference around that. And also it's separating out as well, which is something I've just picked up here now, is there's obviously motorcycles in amongst this, right? So tragically, any accident involving a motorcycle, the survivability rate is significantly reduced, but that will include even, you know, if somebody has an accident, if they have an entrapment at a farm or something like that, it would be captured within our road traffic collision data. So as part of it, but I'll do some further research on that.
Jake?
I'd just like to add to Matt's comments there. A lot of this is asking questions that answer the why. And if you look in the strategy that is draft at the moment, but we're leading forward, and it's making sure that we really are applying curiosity and benchmarking things. So already we've engaged more broadly with people to find out what are other people doing. So Merseyside, Warwickshire, Manchester, London Fire Brigade, and the Dutch in the last, certainly since I've been here. So that's engaging outside to find out what other people are doing. For example, we came back from Merseyside with some really good stuff on home visits and how are they getting at that. In the strategy, we highlight the use of technology to do analysis, so scraping the data, but then analysing the data, and we've got a programme in there for advancing that. That won't be immediate, but it's there, and we're going to drive that forwards. But then also some immediate things that have happened in terms of technology. We've already got drones in service, and that's happened in the last 2 months. So that's looking at how we do things differently, and I think the overall trend is to make sure that we understand things better.
Yeah. I guess there was sort of tensions in some of these things. So I remember back in the day, you used to end up going to an RTC to sweep the road.
Yeah.
And actually, there wasn't any extrication, there wasn't any petrol spill. So you used to wonder why you're going there. Versus, is that core responsibility? But then again, you're actually opening an arterial road up even quicker. So there's an economic benefit. So you don't bring these things up. So taking that principle of one, the tension between various factors. You talked about the grass burning, control burning. Where does that sit with our carbon reduction aspirations and if we do control burning?
So our control burning commissioners is done in line with that seasoned period of time, but we do it very rarely now because of the use of other technologies such as the eye cutter. We would predominantly move towards the eye cutter as opposed to the control burning because of we can control that more as well within that areas. So it's whereas control burn sits within our strategy, I would probably say it's one of our least used ones now, but certainly that we need to be mindful of with the carbon.
Great. So I think when the paper comes forward later, that's an approach to the reduction of carbon by using a different technology to reduce the CO2, which I don't know that we're capturing next. We'll come to that. Any other comments on?
I've got 2 observations, if you don't mind. So just picking up really what Carl mentioned around what the social economic impact is from South Wales Fire Rescue. I think we need to look at how we present our data to the public and add into that our social economic impact. I know NFCC did a work on this many years ago, very English centric, but there is work that you will have a software system that when we put in our data, it will give you a percentage of how much are we worth to the public in terms of pounds and pence. So I think we need to consider doing that in the future. And my second point really was around this might sound a bit of a frustration here for me, but we look at our 7 key strategic indicators. They're all built around our statutory duty. And at the moment, water is not there as a key indicator. It's buried within other service calls. And I think we need to go back to Welsh Government about making sure that that is pitched as a key indicator. I know when the statutory duty came in 2017, the question was asked of Welsh Government and it was declined. But I think now is the time for us to make sure that we understand that is a key indicator for us, and it should be for the Welsh services.
In the light of,
We
the climate
we invest
changes.
heavily into this space.
Why not just report it, put it in the report? Why ask for permission?
We could, yeah, we can change that.
Just
Key indicator. Yeah.
Jack, can I just know if I talking about the M4, you know, I went past that huge car fire last weekend.
Right.
I'd never seen a car on fire so ferociously, and I saw, you know, the guys coming along, two wagons at first, and I just thought, oh, blimey, you know, just looked so scary.
Yes, yeah, and I think Commissioner, as Vince rightly said there, I think the key point for us is the M4 is such a significant arterial road to Wales.
Yes.
You know, our response to that, I mean, we know the disasters that with the Bringlass tunnels in the past,
Yes.
with Wellingston and there, and I think that rapid response that we offer is certainly, it makes a difference to opening up that arterial road fast.
But when you read stuff, but when you see it,
As you said, yeah.
it's an entirely.
I just think, given Chris's point, that's an action for us. So I'd like that recorded. So there's no reason why we can't
We can.
proactively report it.
Yeah.
But the point is that it should be set at a national level
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
So that's an action point for us that we can pursue with the Welsh Government.
It is within the wider service delivery report, but it certainly doesn't sit, you have to think.
It needs to be highlighted.
Yeah.
Carl and Chief.
So really support Kirsty in there. I think it's absolutely the right thing to do. I think we can put back into work on it. I think that also we shouldn't get hamstrung by Welsh Government wanting things. Yeah, that is an important part.
Yeah.
We should have a performance framework in the organisation
Yes.
that drives the business of the organisation. So if that means that we want to add additional performance indicators that's suitable for us, it might not reflect the rest of Wales, but it might reflect by more broadly. Personally, I think we should be doing it because it's the right thing to do. And then we can always utilise the right data for Welsh Government, but as long as we're driving the business of the organisation in the right way, that probably means this needs to broaden significantly. And it links, Dominic, to strategy going forward and Chief, your ambition about where we want to go with the organisation.
I think it does speak to our ambition though, to really be at the forefront of fire and rescue services within Wales. So if we're doing that proactively and we can lead that, we can potentially bring change across the whole of the nation, the benefit of the whole of the nation. And that speaks to our ambition, isn't it? To be at the forefront of fire and rescue in our country.
And we've got greater capacity in this service than the other two services. So you expect this to be the engine house of the country.
Fire engine.
Yes. That shows you've been here a year now.
I got the vernacular.
Yeah.
So I'll knit together 2 points that have just come up, and that was Lady Wilcox's point about the burning vehicle, and then the idea of trying to drive things forward and curiosity. So we had a fire in November, which was a Nissan Leaf, which small battery engine. Since then, we've done a load of work on EVs, and there's work going on down at Cardiff Gate to explore what is the best way to put out EVs, but then also some really good work done down in Fleet as well, developing an in-house mechanism for putting water underneath the vehicle in a really, really easy way. And I take my hats off to all the people involved in that, because this is cutting edge stuff. It's brilliant.
Just looked very frightening, you know, to a person.
Right.
I just want to bring a level of reassurance to the commissioners, really. These are the statutory performance indicators. There's a far deeper dive that goes into these on a quarterly basis, isn't it, Wayne? So there's the story behind this thing and what we do about it is not reflected there, but this is happening. So when we see trends, we put operational bulletins out, we get a cross-party team together in headquarters and say this is emerging. So all that detail goes on in a service delivery meeting at that level. It's just not captured in this room. I think the chair was reflecting this in the previous meeting where it would be nice to have the detail that comes from that meeting presented somewhere to you in the organisation. But it should be reassured that we do a lot of the stuff that's been said here, but we're just going to smart it up.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, it was just to add to that really, in the way I think Matt has a copy of it there. So for example, in the service delivery directive, they do take a seat, and while I wouldn't say they're even key performance indicators, it's more of a narrative, and the data is live, and it's so we have an analyst attending those meetings, and that curiosity is reflected then whether that seems to be going in this direction. Shall we look a bit deeper? And because the data is dynamically viewed in-house, the conversation can flow and strategies can fall off the back of that. But it's just to add with Brian there that reassurance that in-house we have a lot more of a finger on the pulse. It's just that maybe the mechanism of bringing something to yourselves, so that additional reassurance needs to be in probably more detail than this really. So that's something I definitely want to take away.
I wonder whether Gabby or Gabby's postman is often there's is something to look at in terms of reference
Yeah.
for one of the committees. Where that piece of work that's being done, so we're not generating extra paper, it's already there. That might actually come into one of the committees and maybe.
Yeah, the report itself will already come to finance and audit, so we can definitely to bolster that with a bit more detail.
Yes, yeah, we did interrogate this report at the previous meeting, yeah.
It does obviously elongate discussion, but I think having the data, having information is one thing. Setting the ambition, the target, and the key performance APKs that we're expecting or looking to drive for is another. So if we've got, if we've got a broad set of data, that's one thing. But I think that discussion then on what do we want to achieve, what's our expectation, are there areas we want to push faster, deeper, and potentially on the back of the strategy and potentially on the back of the HMIC is a good time to discuss that. Now they can be for us, for South Wales Fire and Rescue, that we are going to say we're going to be more ambitious, we're going to be punch harder around these areas because they matter more to our communities, which probably is going to take us outside the other two gates in Wales. It's sort of like, let's come back to the point, it's sort of the right thing to do. So that's probably the bit that we're not doing right now. Yeah, 100%. That's it.
And in terms of our coverage, 52% of the population of Wales lives within our 10 constituent local authorities. So, we have the majority of the population of the country compared to the other two brigades.
I mean, I guess the whole thing about leading is either doing things differently where everything else has been done the same or doing it better. I guess that's our option because I wouldn't want us to be seen to be the same as North Wales. This, it's a big size outfit. It's got the capacity of the other side. We should be harnessing that and doing things a different way rather than just being driven by the requirement to report.
Yeah.
I think it's a good point. Yeah. Okay. Moving on. 6 budget management strategy. Carrying on with the excitement, Lisa.
Thank you, Commissioner. So this is the first of 3 statutory treasury reports to commissioners. This has to come to full board. This has already been scrutinised and viewed by Finance and Audit Committee who are satisfied and have applied the relevant scrutiny to it. So this is a fairly straightforward pass through. But just in terms of a summary, this report provides the framework within which officers will operate during the year, and also it provides a framework from which commissioners can assess performance. And the way you can do that is you can look at the various limits that are set there. So there's some potential indicators in terms of the level of capital expenditure, the capital financing requirement that's generated from existing assets and borrowing levels. Also, there's affordability ratios in there. And of course, there's some limitations in terms of borrowing that is driven through our capital aspirations and some policies. So you can very much monitor our performance there in terms of how are we different, have we operated within and things like that. So, you will be aware that the finance team, the main crux of Treasury for them is it's about maintaining liquidity. That's the first function. So that just means making sure that we can pay bills when they fall due. Sounds simple, but when you've got no share of Wales's capital settlement and you've got lots of happening in our pension and retirement profile and grants and all that, a little bit more difficult. And then the second thing is to manage risk, and that is making sure that we don't put all our eggs in one basket. And we when we've got surplus cash, and we often do, that's shared around in terms and relates to our counterparty limits. And the second main function of TM for the service and the finance team is making sure that we can borrow within affordable limits to fund that capital programme. So it's about the capital programme. That's what drives borrowing, not shortage of cash in terms of day-to-day operation. And that's a key issue for commissioners to note. Any questions I'd be happy to take.
Okay. Yeah, I'd just like to assure everyone that we have rigorously evaluated this document in the Finance and Audit Committee. The notes are available, Chair. You were there with me at the last, so that means that 2 out of 4 of us have already gone through this in massive detail. As Lisa said, you know, we need to operate a balanced revenue budget, and we need to fund our capital investment plans. And we are under borrowed, which is, I think, you know, an important point to note. We're also an issue that came out of that was the lack of capital that we get.
Or no capital funding really.
Yeah.
It's funded through grants, which are non-recurring, they run off, and some capital receipts.
So, you know, we could be looking at an ask with Welsh Government to provide capital, because, you know, we're all in a, you know, difficult position financially, but there is some light at the end of the tunnel. So I think this is an opposite moment, and I don't know, Chair, how we would do that. But I do think it's an opportunity, along with our other asks, along with our other changes, you know, going on the previous discussion we've had, we need to be a driver of our change. And one aspect is to ask for a capital fund, because things will need to change. And if we tie it in then with a later report with the CRMP changes, you know, capital is important, and we can't keep doing things the way we used to, wholesale. And our changes to our capital programme may well be needed, and Welsh Government need to recognise revenue funding is not appropriate when we need to make such changes. So if we don't ask, we don't get. I recommend that we ask.
Okay, so taking that position, and also the point taken earlier about how we do this, perhaps if the PLT through the chief and you're here as the treasurer, aren't you? You're advising us now.
I am.
Yeah, as opposed to being PLT.
Yeah.
Just trying to work out that. So if we get that, perhaps the framing of a letter that we could then send to the government, setting out how that would work.
I drafted a plan as to how we can make that ask. I don't think that's going to happen quickly or easily, because our funding arrangements are set out and are enshrined in a legislative instrument.
Yeah.
So but it's worth progressing.
Yeah, it's one of those things. If it was asked for 10 years ago, we might have it now.
Yes.
If we ask for it now, we might have it in 10 years. Whatever.
Yeah. But what we don't want to do, Chair, is to put at risk the levy that we have, you know, because that is a very well, you know, we're very just find the right words. It's an appropriate way of funding the service. So we don't want to put any appropriateness at risk. But by the same time, things have changed, and you know, we need to review and revise what we're getting.
And I think that is a risk when you are revisiting that financing legislation. Yeah.
It's all of it.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Yes.
So this is, I'm opening it up for discussion rather than making a hard and fast decision here, but just drawing everyone's attention to the fact that we don't have a capital programme budget.
It's possibly going to come. So we've got a budget. It's the funding of it that's in question. And I think that whole piece could come into question with our governance structures probably in due course.
Send your paper to the Finance and Audit Committee setting out some options.
Yeah,
Okay.
that might be a
Okay.
a safe way of doing it. But in the wider, you know, in the Welsh Government budget that was passed a couple of weeks ago, they had more capital funding from UK government. So, you know, they've had changes to that because they haven't had capital funding, have they, for years.
I think it was possibly something that we need to connect on an always basis with, because this isn't just a South issue, is there? We're all constituted under the same funding arrangement. So this is a bigger piece than, you know, probably what we discussed in here.
But going back to the focus of this report, we're under borrowed, which is good. We're using short-term and internal borrowing until we're looking for a fall in interest rates. And then we look at longer term then. So we tick the boxes, you know, this is a safe report. And the money is being spent prudentially.
Okay, great. Thank you, Carl.
I have one question, Lisa, for you from position of ignorance, which is generally my starting point. Has there been a conscious decision by government? I mean, Welsh government and UK government around capital funding. So I look at my old world, we had no capital either, and it got eaten out. So there seems to have been a conscious decision, and I wonder if at some point to cut capital funding. And I don't know if it's the same in the NHS. Looking at colleagues that sit on boards, there's still capital funding that's going to the NHS.
There's capital funding that goes to the NHS, and there's significant capital funding that goes to the 21st Century Schools and Colleges programme. So there is capital money available to Welsh government. That's seen in school buildings, pensions, and roads. So this is the first service that I've come across that doesn't have a capital allocation. All of the aspects of Welsh government responsibility that I'm familiar with, health, local government, education, HE, FE, would all have capital allocations.
So there's definitely something.
Yes,
There's different Commissioner.
The legislation.
It is because of the legislation. And also, I think the way that capital funding is available to those institutions is quite different. So NHS can access capital funding as opposed to maybe a specific allocation.
So, for instance, the NHS can't borrow. So local government can borrow. The NHS in Wales isn't able to borrow, so we wouldn't be able to finance capital investments in the same way as this service can and use its revenue to do that. It's not allowed to do that.
Yeah.
So I think what's different here is the legislative framework in which funding for fire and rescue sits at the moment.
I think there's no single route. In the NHS in England, when it comes to hospital, you have to bid to government for the capital to do it. You don't get it.
So it's available, but you have to, like you said, you have to bid for it. It's not allocated.
You have both in NHS. You have an allocation, discretionary capital allowance, which you spend as you see fit within your health organisation, and then there is application that you bid for. So there's both.
Yes, and this is our difficulty when we working with co-location partners such as WAST.
Yeah,
So that was me. Vicky question. Just generally, I appreciate colleagues have really looked at the report. Any concerns over the last couple of days around the cost of borrowing if we do decide to do things going forward? Bearing in mind, clearly the Chancellor's concerned around the cost of borrowing. And also then, more we're looking at the Chief, I think, really, around the transformation and change programme and funding for that and what that would look like going forward.
Right, so first one.
Yeah.
Cost of borrowing. Yes, there is concerns about cost of borrowing. We've worked into so the good thing about the Treasury Management Strategy, it's addressed after we've pieced together what our revenue requirement is and our capital requirement. So the costs of financing capital investment is already costed into the revenue budget. I think what's useful to note here for commissioners is that is very much a limit what we've put in for capital expenditure. So exceeding that is really only an option for us if it's grant funding.
Yes.
So, and that's what you need to be aware of in future capital monitoring reports is, you will notice from other monitoring reports I've brought we've overspent by 2.2 million, I think it was in the last report, but all of this is Welsh Government funded or funded from the energy services, something like that. So we very much, when we set in our capital budget, it's about the level. So the schemes within which, in that level, we can flex and move on because we know that capital projects take, less or longer time to complete rather than in a year. So I think the cost of borrowing is factored into the revenue budget for the level of capital investment we wish to make for next year. That's there. I think what is at risk there, and that's what this report captures, is, that cost, the bank rate, it's dropped, isn't it? It's dropped down to 4.5%. They were thinking that it was going to drop quicker because inflation seemed to be dropping. Now we know inflation has gone back up to 2.8%, and there's a lot of instability in the economy here. Whatever's happening over in US washes across the Atlantic. We know trade tariffs and the rest of that. That's not going to make spending money or doing business any cheaper for anybody. We've heard this week, haven't we, on the news about the 25% premium put on any imports over there, that's going to affect us and that's going to drive prices up. Inflation, if it stays high, that's going to affect pay awards and things like that, and definitely bank rate. So bank rate, we think it's going to track down. If it tracks back up, that pushes the cost of borrowing above what we've prepared in all of those pieces for commissioners now. It doesn't look likely, but it's always a risk. So the option then is to flex and reduce the level at which you are going to invest on a capital basis. So that's the option. So this is a moving feast for us then during the year that we look at with our monitoring information. This is why before we make decisions, the best thing you can do is ask what the financial position is. Yeah, and the second bit, what was the second bit there?
Probably more for the chief, which is around the
Transformation.
transformation and change programme, which we know is ambitious, and funding stroke for that going forward.
So I'll take off the beginning of my comment now, commissioners, is to move on from Lisa's point. And global instability is enormous right now, massive, and international relations don't look like they're going to settle down. So I am looking at a period of instability, and we've got to be very, very careful about that at the moment. So then we come on to the transformation programme and the strategy and HMI. So we had a senior leadership team away day the other day, and the whole point of that was to establish a clear timeline. We've got 60 boxes of activity within the strategy. We've got the 82 recommendations. We've got the work that's sitting in the transformation programme, and we're about to cross-check that we have got everything squared away for HMI. We think we've actually already turned the activity that's going on there. But the aim of that away day was to get timelines and costings for every single box of activity that we're doing. And I'm due to get back from the directors next week the rough order of merit costings for each piece of activity, as well as an affirmation of the timeline. That's rough order of merit figures, but at least we'll have a picture there of what does this overall transformation program look like in terms of costing. And then one of my observations is that at the moment we're doing piecemeal transformation, which slows everything down. So each time we have a piece of work that takes place, we've got to have a discussion about £50,000 worth of activity, and then there's something else that happens, and that represents a cost. Now that's important. It's very important to make sure that we are scrutinising the money that we're spending. But I need to have a discussion with my team about, can we get that into a discrete pot of money in which we've got the overall cost. There we go. And it makes it easier so that we come to you and you say, there is a pot of money. Within it are a series of activities. Are you as commissioner content with that? Are we content with that? Is Lisa content with that, with her current hat on as your advisor? And then we can go forward, and that would allow us to spin things faster, in my view. But there's a bit of a discussion about, is that the right approach or not, which we'll have internally.
Any other?
It's just for shared awareness, really, just where we do get some capital from Welsh Government, which we're very thankful for, is National Resilience Wales. So unless that's changed, which I don't think it has, we get $1 million. Which keeps us at the cutting edge of all things national resilience.
I suppose that bit as well, when you've got Welsh Government has some undersaved.
Yes.
And they want to put out the doors whether we can.
Yeah. There's two aspects to that as well. It's revenue and capital, isn't it? And I think that's just having something that's ready, because it may or may not happen. It happened this year for capital. They didn't think it was going to happen, but it hadn't happened for about 4 years before that. So it's very as and when. And just coming back to the chief's point there about the transformation and change programme, I just want to draw commissioners' attention back to the estimates that I put in the budget setting report, the impact of that work on the reserve position. Yeah. So then I'll be coming back to you in September with a reserve policy, and that is that we do have some, by and large, and what we use in there. So I think there is a cost envelope for that change and transformation programme. I accept what the chief is saying in terms of this piecemeal transformation. I think what I'd like to see happen is that we've got a plan that we can hang numbers off, come back to you as an overall strategic piece. But I think for Commissioner's point of view and comfort, we may need to have those milestone updates because costs will undoubtedly change when you put in something quite rudimentary together, you know, in terms of this is a project, I think £500,000, this is a project, I think 100,000. You need to know closer to the date what the constituent elements of that are and what is revenue, what is capital, what is temporary and what is permanent. And specifically, I have a duty to report to you and advise under the financial regulations about anything that permanently increases the base budget. So even, you know, so those 4 different dimensions I've just mentioned, very important for you to continue to consider and get updates on.
Thank you.
Well, I guess it takes broad point. Jim's talking about this, the general instability that's around and how these things can have very immediate effects, even when we just planned something yesterday. I'm looking at the economic package. We read it at Finance and Audit, and it already looks really out of date.
Yeah, because the template was at Christmas, wasn't it? I think what's important there, Commissioner, to note is that the economic condition there, what it gives you is an appetite to flex in terms of if we think that interest rates are going to skyrocket because there's this risk in the economy and we need to borrow within the next 12 months and our capital plans will evidence that, then it's the timing of that borrowing, is it? Do it now before they go up. But if it looks like as if they go into drop, try and sort of delay any capital investment so that you can wait until that critical moment. So it's getting that sweet spot right for borrowing for us.
I guess like we're all hearing now that the OBR have said that 1.3 million houses will be built over the next period. That means construction companies know that is a thing to go for. So they'll start to pivot towards that. We try to get a new fire station built, and the construction companies are now thinking, actually, we'd rather do 1,000 houses.
Yeah.
So it's going to be managing the whole thing. Okay, great. I think we've had a good look at this. Thank you. Moving on then. Carbon reduction roadmap, page 195.
Morning, thank you. My name is Becca Morgan, Assistant Deputy Officer, for anybody who doesn't know. So this report is putting forward a decision on the Carbon Reduction 2030 Roadmap. So it was presented in draft form and it's now been with the graphics team by condition. So it sets out the context of our decarbonisation debate, sets a bit of a vision for 2030, how a fire service with the environment and nature might look on that time scale, and in accordance with the tasks set out as part of the plan. So the roadmap presents a journey to 2030 where there are decarbonisation milestones met along the way under different phases. So it covers our past work to date, of which is highlighted in the report. Talks about our progress in phase 2, which we are still currently in, and takes us up to 2027. And then talks about the kind of last tasks we would have to truly kind of embed a carbon reduction and environmental protection culture within the service. So I am looking to get this published as soon as possible and implement all of the different tasks. So the tasks will be monitored via the Sustainability Steering Group, which is an internal group comprising mostly at the moment of procurement, fleet and property colleagues and myself. But looking to expand that group then to match the tasks within the carbon reduction plan and make sure that all our kind of asset categories and operations are covered, that there's kind of carbon reduction tasks within each of those areas and categories. So looking to publish that as soon as possible, take any comments on both the format of the plan and also the tasks incorporated within it. I've also provided some data on our carbon emissions. So I provided 2 years as these are 2 comparable years. We have had issues internally where both with the Welsh Government reporting template, where that was subject to change, and also with a lot of handover of sustainability officers, where sometimes it's quite obvious to see how other people have been reporting from, from their notes and calculations, and other times it's not so clear. So we've been reporting either internally or externally on carbon footprint since 2019. We were doing both the Welsh Government template and our own internal calculations, but we haven't for the last 2 years been running those internal calculations as a side. This came up in a previous report. We'd have to make capacity to do that. A lot of this report is saying how we kind of build those robust systems to report as we have to report annually to Welsh Government. I'm not saying that there's no other room for that. I'm just saying I want to get that cleared off. I want to make sure we're where we need to be with that before we stretch a little bit higher. And I've also provided what I see as my immediate priorities for both carbon reduction and environmental worker service, which are looking at energy a bit closer, if not kind of finding resource where we have an energy management position, looking to source energy management software, and accreditation within an environmental management system. And I've also provided kind of an alternative environmental KPIs. So these cover things that are incorporated as part of carbon footprint. What's in the picture, these can develop to cover all manner of things and be reported annually then within the annual environmental review. So I'm happy to take any comments or questions.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just going to say, Bethan, it's an incredible piece of work. And I know you don't have a huge team that wish to do it, so thank you so much for compiling this. It's definitely the way ahead, isn't it? Whatever we think of it, we have to be on board with this. And are we open to, because we've talked a lot this morning with different things about, being relevant, being ready to change or adapt or amend. So how are we in those terms with you and this, any changes that come in,
Yeah, I think they can be incorporated. So sustainability statements going quarterly, and carbon reduction plan would be part of that review. If we need to add more tasks, like I say, I'm open to recruiting more members to this group to cover a wider variety of what the service covers. And if that means that there's new tasks to be added under different categories or even new categories, then as far as I'm concerned, I'm open to that. How that works with changing the document after it's been published, I'm not sure. But with regards to it being a kind of a live document internally, I'm fine with that, because there is one I've pitched internally and externally. So this is the same document. All that's happened is I've removed the names of members of staff. So you've got the carbon reduction task and then the phase. So I can't see an issue in us doing saying what's the word I'm looking for, adaptations, newer versions. And even if we can't do that externally, happy to keep it that way internally. Definitely different kinds of tasks are gonna arise as new technologies emerge and as things coming on.
And thank you for that assurance. And my kind of sub question to that would be cost. Obviously, because I'm very focused on our finance, as we all are. So how much is this going to cost us?
Yes, if you have that information.
Yeah.
So Bethan sits within the property and estates team, and many of the quick wins we've got at the minute sit there and with colleagues in Fleet. So we it is just Bethan as a sustainability officer. So I think that the budget is subsumed within the property budget. So we're already, and we have been for years, investing in expanding and making better the electric vehicle infrastructure. Officers will be aware of the I was going to say superpower. 50 kilowatts is not superpower, is it? But the enhanced charging capabilities on 6 of our strategic sites. And Bethan has been instrumental in getting grants there. So in terms of revenue, it's all within property. Also in terms of capital, it's within property. So stuff like ASOS heat pumps, green roofs, greywater harvesting, all that stuff. It are elements and criteria that we're working into what would be modern fire stations, operational fire stations. You would have seen it when you walked around Popham last year.
Yes.
I think you saw I mean, for some of those sustainable changes, it does, we need more space on station to put all that kit. You know, it does suck up more space in our footprint, but they're already being costed out in projects. Yeah.
Thank you.
Carl?
Well, the first question was Lady Wilcox taken, which is that capacity piece really, and really understand that better than you would forward. I think the report really helped. That's great to see and absolutely the right thing to do. And I think obviously as we see Welsh Government's ambition changing, we'll have to keep an eye on that because obviously that, you know, that will make a difference going forward. Obviously we've been successful so far. Likelihood of more grants coming through, do we think, at the national level?
We've been very successful so far, haven't it?
Yeah, over the last kind of 2 financial years, it's been, you know, just over £500,000 of for projects that in most cases wouldn't have taken place otherwise. There is still funding available. We're looking into funding for solar panel installation for the sites now. And also there's another low carbon heat grant coming up for the next financial year. So hopefully do the same as we did last time, you know, the decarbonisation of heat at 3 sites. I think the ULEV grants are likely to dry up a little bit and maybe reinstate after a while. Like I said, the kind of energy and building side of things is more of a priority for me at the moment.
I think what will help us target those grants is disparate strategic plans in our main asset classes. So, you know, the strategic sustainability plan for property, strategic sustainability plan for fleet, strategic sustainability plan for IT infrastructure and frontline operation. So when we've got those and we know what those investment pieces are like, I think that the grant is going to be a little easier to target and approach, but also for Commissioner's awareness, we have a £2 million reserve on the balance sheet if the grants don't come through to be able to progress some of that work. So we identified this as a priority, I'd say 4 years ago.
Okay.
For the last 3 years, I had a team of people working on climate change. It is proven that it's taken place, despite what you might read in some of the press. It is the biggest existential threat that we have in the human race and for the globe. So this is really serious stuff. The other thing is that it is affecting us on a daily basis in Wales. So we need to do as much as we possibly can as part of our, as being an organisation to transform as much as we can, because that helps Wales with its 2030 target, and then it helps the nation, then it helps the world. So it makes sense that we do this as much as we can. I am deeply impressed with Bethan's work here. It's one of the work streams that is so together. Having walked into the organisation, I'm also deeply impressed at the amount of work that has taken place in an organisation. So Bethan, my hat's off to you. Yes, I make an express statement to you that you can contact me whenever you need, if you're encountering problems, because I recognise how small your team is, and I don't want to chew your time up with unnecessary meetings. So you reach out to me whenever you need assistance. Okay?
Right. Okay, then coming in on that. Thank you very much for all that. Just looking at the paper, I don't know if it applies in Wales, but it does in England. I think it's national across the UK. The building research establishment environmental assessment model, which is how buildings are measured in terms of their environment. Do we do that as part of the new builds? Great, because there was outstanding, wasn't it? You could get buildings which are great, a whole range of.
That's the BREEAM, is there BREEAM?
BREEAM.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because Hilroyne Station was a BREEAM accredited station when it was built.
Right, so like Treorchy, would that have been?
We can get that information from Mike, can't we? We come back to commissioners. Yeah, not a good point.
Measurement.
No, we do it in local government because all the new schools we built.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So, my final glad to see in the opening narrative on page 3, we talk about the work about preventing and controlling fires as part of our carbon offset. And whilst it's in the narrative, but in the appendices, appendix 1, in terms of a thing to do, I just want to capture it.
I think, as I said when we spoke before, I think it is an important part of the narrative, but I am slightly sceptical about including it in our actual carbon footprint. Just because it's a bit like offsetting, then that is, it's on one hand, it's our reason for being, isn't it? There's not going to be a scenario in which we're not doing that work. So I don't want to kind of claim decarbonisation kudos we haven't got in a way. I know exactly what you're saying. There's not, obviously it's completely scientifically correct what you're saying, reducing fires, reduce carbon emissions. But I just want to kind of exercise caution around linking that too heavily to our carbon footprint.
Well, we could do it as a prerogative, couldn't we? We could then say, these are all the things that we've done. And we are working with, say, Cardiff University to look at making this a statistically significant contribution that should be understood. So we could at least measure the potential carbon offset that we could have done rather than include it in our figures.
Okay. So you think maybe we need a kind of academic or maybe statistical category of work then?
Well, we don't have to. We can work with some research.
I think we're in danger of making a policy on the hoof. So I just think that that's a really useful suggestion, but it just needs some consideration, and it's not fair for Bethan to say, yeah, absolutely.
No, I get that.
Because it's not really, because it's been raised, so we need an answer, yes or no, but I really do think it is for Bethan and the operational side of the organisation to take that.
If I may, there is something to add to that, not necessarily for actually tracking how much you're getting in carbon offset, so to speak. But it's, if we put, and I'm thinking particularly wildfire, if we put them out faster, so if we invest more into it, what is the carbon reduction that we actually achieve? So there is something about, is there an investment, and that probably comes into the CRMP. So it's not something for decision now, but it's something just to have the back of your head, I think.
Don't sit somewhere. Yes.
Oh, we've got this perverse situation with the carbon calculator submitted to Welsh Government, that when we buy goods and services to make us greener, unless carbon impact, it actually has quite a big impact on the calculation, because part of the calculation is supplies of goods and services, and that's quite and it's, it's questionable how accurate that metric actually is, because it is just based on spend at this moment in time. Ideally, what you want is your suppliers coming forward and saying, I'm going to supply you with this corporate wear, shirt, trousers, socks, and this is the CO2 emissions that I've accumulated in providing this to you. It doesn't happen like that. So it's a very arbitrary calculation at the moment. But investing in ASOC funds costs more. Green actions now are at a cost premium. It does have this perverse effect of, we know it's better because it's decarbonising, but actually because we're spending money, it's pushing our carbon calculation up. But I think it's the type of thing that now it has that adverse impact. In the future, it'll have that payback. So that's the way to look at it, isn't it? I think. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? Right, carrying on then with the 6-8. Christian?
Thank you.
Christian.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner. So this report is the proposal of the introduction of a service-wide community risk management plan, and it's a paper for decision as recommended as commissioners. You know the report, but you also agree for us to implement the community risk management plan and the associated investment within the report. So as a ways of background, colleagues and commissioners, you'll be aware that in England, Fire and Rescue Services, there is a requirement for services to carry out a community risk management plan. In Wales, there isn't. However, we feel that this would be a really good point for us as an organisation to carry out a full CRMP. I think it's important to note at this stage that as a service, we are familiar with the terminology of the CRMP, but we use it in a different context here in South Wales. We use it as a local, almost like a business plan for local unitary authority areas and stations within those unitary authority areas. However, if you agree to the CRMP service-wide today, that will inform local planning. Just to give you some historic background, as a service, we undertook a fire cover review back in 2013, which was in the backdrop of austerity. It was part of a wider plan of financial reductions, and the fire cover review was one element of that. One of the outcomes of the fire cover review was the closure of 2 stations, that being Blaenau and Porth. I put that in there really just as a context and a line in the sand, the date, because since 2013, I'm fairly confident that the risk within South Wales has significantly changed, both in population, infrastructure, building design, and etc. Plus, on top of that, climate change and our statutory duty now for water. So I think it's important that we take this opportunity now to do a full, proper CRMP, and that we follow the guidance of NFCC, the framework for carrying out a CRMP. I feel that is a strong position for us to go into because, one, it's been well tested within English services and the feedback in it guides services really well. But we can also use the elements of the framework as a performance measure throughout the lifespan of the project, but also through to evaluation. So the proposal is that we undertake a comprehensive service-wide CRMP, and this will give us clear data-driven information that we're able to design our service upon. And that will look at 4 key areas, one being response, second one is prevention, protection, and resilience. To carry out our CRMP, should you agree to this today, we are proposing to engage in consultation with a company that carries out data analysis and model simulation. So we're going out to procurement for this to be bought in, mainly because it will allow us to be able to see our service in a live context of simulation should we want to change our response standards, and it will also give us a clear indication of where our risks are in South Wales. What that allows us to do then as ELT, SLT is look at that model and then just make professional decision making on how our service will look going forward from those 4 key areas that I discussed. So within this, I've highlighted some areas in there for you to look at. One around the social economic duty and the impact of that. I've put in there around communication plan. Should you agree to this today, we've started a draft communication plan that will go out Monday to our staff through routine notice. And I've also touched on there's some legal aspects in there. In terms of the financial and procurement, looking at some companies that have the ability to carry out data analysis for us, we're proposing this around £45,000 plus VAT for that process. But you need to note as well, aside to that, we're also going for procurement for dynamic cover tool and an on-call system as well. They are 2 separate procurements. This one is very specific on the help for CRMP. So if you look at the outcome of a CRMP and what does the evaluation look like, the first thing to note is that looking at the strategic risks, the CRMP will impact in a positive way on 9 of our 22 strategic risks. And we are going to use the NFCC toolkit as our evaluation throughout the whole project lifespan. And in terms of delivery, phase 1, which is the data analysis part, which is the important sector, we're looking around about 4 weeks for procurement, 14 to 18 weeks for the company to put a data dump into that system. So we'll have something by August in terms of the model simulation package. And I'll probably stop there, taking any questions.
Yes.
Thank you. I have absolutely no beef at all with the proposal. It's long overdue, and I think it's going to be the bedrock, really, isn't it? And they take the organisation forward. So I really welcome that. And just 3 questions, partly answered. So the report refers to phases. I'm not quite sure what the phases are. It would be really helpful, if not now, just to have a note and understand what the phasing of the project looks like. And then the associated timescale. So you mentioned August now, but it would be really useful to have associated timeframes about how this project will work out. And then finally, for me, the paper refers to engagement with communities. Could you explain what the nature of that community engagement looks like? How is that done? How does that feed into the process? And in particular, what steps will be taken to engage members of our community who we know are least likely to put up their hands or to come forward to talk about their particular needs? So I'm thinking about members of our Black, Asian, minority ethnic community, our Gypsy traveller communities, those parts of our communities that perhaps will not come forward to engage. But we need to not wait for them, we need to go to them.
Okay, so I'll pick up the first question around the phases. I've purposely put in there the phases with no timelines at this stage. So should you agree to this today, there'll be a full project timeline to this. The three phases that you're referring to, the first one is around data and business intelligence. That's the bit we're in now. We're actually started that piece of work. The second one is around equality and people in impact assessments. And the final is around stakeholder and public engagement, which is what you just picked up on. Now, so that's the three phases we'll be looking at. Like I said, we're in phase one now. Phase one, we're looking around about between now and August, realistically, for us to have something on the table that allows us to make informed decisions around 4 key areas of our work. The stakeholder and public engagement part, something which we do already in terms of our strategic planning, and it is about reaching out to communities. It's how we engage with them is absolutely vital, and that's something you just picked up on. We need to find ways of being able to reach into the communities. Now, one of the things we like to do is open our doors up in terms of our fire stations. They're all located in key areas of our communities, and really try and open that engagement up. But I think it's going to be through media and going out into the public, getting people's views in.
Can I just add to that? You know, we've got, again, with our other public service partners, so local government and Welsh government, you know, they will have ways and mechanisms of doing that. So rather than reinventing the wheel, to add to that, to add to Kirsty's point, you know, maybe ask them how they do it. Yeah.
That's fine. So I was about to say we've sort of picked up on. I'm working with Bella Morgan PSB at the moment. Only because I got relationships from there from previous.
Yeah.
And they've asked that exact question: can we do this together rather than us doing an engagement session? They're doing an engagement session.
Yes.
We're doing an engagement session. So we're looking at ways we can build that in.
Well, I would say that you need to do that with Gwent PSB and.
So this is just a test case to see whether that's feasible to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking at we need to feed into our PSB partners.
And I'm glad it's just Gwent PSB because it used to be the 5 local authorities, you know,
Yes, yeah.
everyone had their, so that was a nightmare. But now you've got a much better vehicle.
Can I just say, no disrespect to Wayne, but we know we have relatively little response, don't we, to the strategic plan? I mean, we'd like it to be better. It's not.
Yeah.
So I think if we're just relying on the mechanisms that we've relied
Yeah.
on for strategic plan,
Yeah.
we will not get the
Yeah.
engagement that we need for something like this. And I think, you know, we need to learn lessons across the border, Mid and West. At the moment, gone through some not dissimilar, and it's causing a lot of angst in some communities who really feel that they're being done to, and they don't understand the decision making behind some of the things that are happening to their communities and potentially to the facilities they've got in their communities. So I just think we've got to potentially find a better way than just putting something out there and waiting for people to respond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they won't,
No.
but they will when they see the result.
Yes, correct.
And if they don't like the result, that's when you'll
That's when the placards come.
So, so I've also reached out to other FRSs in England. They've been through this quite a few times now. So I'm learning quite a lot from them, how they reach out to community, unless every community is different.
Yes.
However, there's some very commonalities in there. So I've got the learning from them as well. So as we go through these phases, I'll bring this to you as commissioners. So I think we need to take this in a phased approach rather than trying to do all this in one go. That'll never work. But as importantly, we need to take our staff on board with this, because This is not a fire cover review. This is much wider than a fire cover review. This is our fingerprint going forward for the next generation. So I think if we're going to do this, we need to do this really well, and we need to do it very detailed as well.
Just thinking of the different communities, you know, Mia will agree the Rhondda is different to the Rhondda Fawr, but people just call it the Rhondda, but it's different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're much more civilized in the Rhondda. Yeah, because Mia is to the Rhondda Fawr. So.
Yeah, thank you. So I just wanted to add some support to the points Christian and has made, and of course Wayne's team there, and give some reassurance to the commissioners. Our head of communication and engagement has worked on a draft communication strategy that has 3 key lines to that. So that includes our internal staff, our external staff, and how we consult. We have looked at lessons learned from consultation on our strategic plan. The planning, performance and risk team have done some work on how they can improve that already. They've identified some best practice and some learning. Christian's points there are spot on in terms of our biggest assets are our staff, the people that are working in and around the community, opening up our fire stations for that consultation process. And some of this will give us an opportunity to feed on the back of the vision, mission, values and chief strategy, and get our staff involved in that area and talk to our communities around those pieces in the CRMP stuff. So it is something that we've already considered, that we've been discussing, and some learning has gone on in the background, and it will be reflected in our new developed communication strategy. So I just wanted to add some support in there and a bit of reassurance as our head of communication and engagements not with us today.
Yeah.
Quick one from me, but this is a public forum, so I would just like to make a statement about this. We are approaching this with no preconceived ideas, and this is really important to transmit both to our people within the service and externally as well. We don't have ideas about closing anything down, opening anything up, or anything like that. This is going to be a data-driven piece of work that will allow real evidence-based decision making. That's really important to underline.
Can I just quickly on that one as well? I think it'd be remiss of me not to highlight this, is that undoubtedly it's going to result in work, and that work's going to fall on the same shoulders that the tremendous amount of work that's already landing. So challenge for us as senior leaders and commissioners of this organisation is how we prioritise, because if everything's a priority, then nothing's a priority. So we're going to have to revisit the priority, because it will throw out work change. And I think it's incumbent upon us to reassure our workforce, because there's a massive internal fit here, that we will really carefully consider that and map it out in a sustainable pace.
I understand what you're saying, but also this is the day job. This, the CRMP would be an annual thing. It would be an iteration. It would be a driver of how the organisation.
Eventually we'll get there, but this is the first time we've ever done it. So it will be a cultural adaptation, and then before it becomes part of the DNA.
So just going back to the engagement thing that was talked about. We talked about a couple of minority groups which are hard to get hold of, but there are majority groups which are really hard to get hold of. If you want to affect the numbers, just going to like an Asian and Gypsy travellers will not work the numbers up, because mass engagement legitimises the options that we take. Otherwise, it is done to people rather than with people. And when it comes to using fire stations, I understand that we've got these posts out there in the community, but fire stations are designed for people to come out of rather than to go into. And most people don't think about going to a fire station. So I guess it's a balance. I think it might be different in the on-call areas. In the metropolitan, in the urban areas, it's a different thing. The fire station is not a place where people, the people that will go to a fire station when it's open are the people that like to see the fire engines, and the communities. It's about going out to them, finding where they locate, where they engage, and being part of that. I think that's because previously when we used to do recruitment with minority groups, they used to say, you only come to us when you want to recruit. You have to have that relationship that's ongoing, so that when you do go there, they're prepared to listen to you in a different way.
Which is why the PBS will be a good vehicle, Chair, and
Right, Carl.
Just going to put it up one line that we actually raised by this morning, is that actually there will need to be a degree of prioritisation around the breadth, the ambition that we've got in the service, and some of those issues that we're currently looking at might be further down the priority list. Some things might come up. So absolutely that prioritisation piece, which will be a challenge, will be really important.
I come back to the point of work last week, week before, about prioritisation. That's the first prioritisation, and one of the things that was obvious from that meeting was getting people to put stuff into priority 4. It's hard. People tend to put, oh, that's my priority 1. It's like, no, knock it down, knock it down.
Yeah.
And then the other real challenge is to decide what we are not.
Yes, yes.
And that's something we really need to make advances of.
Yeah.
But that leads nicely, I think, into the next point, the PMO, because my big ambition now is to make sure that everything is appropriate program.
Right, just before we do that,
Very quickly, Chair, it's just to offer the commissioners an element of reassurance with the work the Christian's doing. We are now in operations changing the titles of the CRMPs, so they will no longer be termed the CRMPs at station level. They will be addressed as station plans, and the unitary authority group managers will be implementing a local safety plan. So that will be so we're changing that terminology so there's no miscommunication between CRMP, the work Christian's doing, CRMP, the station is doing, which are all there. So we've done that.
Good.
okay, just before we come to this next one, I just want to propose something to the board. We are doing reasonably well for time. We've got a meeting that runs on after this at 12:30, and then we're going to come back at 2 minutes. Do you think it might be better just to punch through these last ones?
Yes.
And finish it all off rather than get everyone back in here at 2 o'clock?
Yes,
I need to
absolutely.
give my apologies for the second half, so I need
Yeah.
to leave at 12:30. So
Okay, then what you would have to
You're
leave.
going anyway.
Yeah, so we, is it okay if we
Yes.
crack on with this and then
Yeah.
we'll take that next meeting on the rising and up? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, programme management office government.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, commissioners. And so the chief's stole my thunder with the introduction, but this piece seamlessly leads into improvement of prioritisation for the service and how important that piece of work is for us. This paper is recommending the establishment of a permanent portfolio management office. The financial aspects were discussed at Finance and Audit Committee that was held last week. The recommendations are that the commissioners approve the implementation of a permanent portfolio management office, and that the commissioners approve and support the required recruitment of personnel to resource this portfolio office plan within the service. We've heard the importance of effective portfolio and programme management in order to support our prioritisation a number of times already within this meeting. It follows best practice and things that we've learned from other fire and rescue services across the sector, as well as HMIC FRS lessons learnt from the services that do well in their transformation and change programmes. The proposal is to recruit a permanent portfolio manager. That will be supported with 3 programme managers. We've already approved the temporary recruitment of those 3 programme managers. We've recruited 1 to date. They were initially recruited at a 12-month period. We are proposing that we extend that to 24 months. So you will have 3 temporary transformation programme managers with an opportunity to make those permanent following a review at the end of that period. That gives us the opportunity to implement the process, a programme management office, and it gives us flexibility to embed that into the service as we continue to review and streamline our operating model. This will also be supported by 1 project manager. So the recommendations are for the commissioners to approve the implementation of a permanent portfolio management office, and that the commissioners approve and support the required recruitment of personnel into this office.
Yeah, just as in the Treasury report, we went through this report with great detail and scrutiny at the Finance and Audit Committee. So just to give assurance to commissioners that, we've looked at this in some detail already.
Correct. This is how the tires kicked on it. Right. Has anyone got any comments? No. Or we can go through this? Okay. We're playing with you, Dominic. Portfolio records update.
Sorry, I missed that. Sorry.
We're saying we've approved it. We're now staying with you for the core code of ethics update, item 7.1.
Thank you. So this paper is an update to commissioners on the core code of ethics. This was requested following previous meetings where we approved the core code of ethics to be embedded into our service, reiterating the commitment of that and the approval of a culture statement. The recommendation is that the commissioners note the work that's been taken to support the embedding of the core code of ethics within the service and as a foundation for our values and wider review and ongoing commitment to improve our culture, and that the commissioners note the work to promote and embed the core code of ethics, the culture statement and its aspirations in our review of the service vision, mission and values. So following the commissioners re-emphasising of their support for the core code of ethics, we've undertook a number of pieces of work and staff engagement across the service. This sits as the underpinning mechanism for our ongoing values review and our ongoing discussions with staff. I'm going to outline some of those things that we've done to date, and then I'm going to talk around some of the engagement that we've done with our staff. This directly supports a number of recommendations from the cultural review, and those are outlined in the report in detail. So the core code of ethics has been included in our annual improvement plan. It's also included in our new strategic plan, and it underpins our deliverables and our principles to give a commitment to the public that we are doing those in an ethical way. We've included the core code of ethics into our recruitment packs, our promotion processes, and we make it clear in our application process that people will need to adhere to those when they join our fire and rescue service, and they're embedded in our recruitment and promotion processes. We've developed a number of different resources that we've shared with our staff across the service. These include posters and briefing cards, and we've included it in both our operational and corporate inductions. We've engaged in service-wide discussion on the core code of ethics, and this has underpinned our values and culture review. We've already mentioned the values and culture review and the strategy and how that's included in there. I'm just going to give a brief overview of the engagement that's happened to date. So the core code of ethics, we started talking to staff around this in August and November. These, of course, were the underpinning principles on the transformation roadshows. So each one of the commissioners took part in all staff engagement where we talked to staff about the core code of ethics and were clear on their responsibilities. This was followed by a middle leaders engagement session in July, where we talked about the core code of ethics and culture change. We provided managers with toolkits, resources and activities to keep these discussions going with their staff. We then did a middle managers engagement session in August 24. This was focusing around assessing ourselves, and it was following a brief to our middle leaders on the upcoming HMICFRS inspection. We talked to staff about our priorities, our self-assessment, our future improvements and culture, and they were able to feed into that, and that underpins some of the work that we've done in our strategy. This was followed in December by a middle managers session called Our Service, Our Values, where we represented the core code of ethics. We tested middle leaders' understanding of it, and we presented them with toolkits and activities that they participated in. This gave us evidence that they understood it, so they gave us examples of how they've embedded and lived the core code of ethics within their teams, so that we could be reassured that they knew what it meant and what their responsibilities are. We also sought their feedback on the vision, mission and values. In December, we embarked on service-wide engagement on this. This was manager-led. Those managers talked to their teams about the core code of ethics and provided us with evidence of their teams delivering it and their understanding of it. We also sought feedback on vision, mission and values. There was a total of 176 sessions with 1,359 members of staff taking part in those face-to-face. In January, ELT completed our session on that. So we did the same session as all of our teams and staff, and we fed back in the same way. So our opinions and our voice was measured the same as any other team within service. We didn't have unduly weighted feedback. It went into the same process with the same form, and we completed the same piece of work. We also at that session talked about our future strategy and how we would deliver that. In January, we went back to our middle leaders and we took them a revised or preliminary draft of the vision, mission and values, and we talked to them about how we could improve it. We took their feedback on board and we adjusted it as a result of that. In January, we completed some temperature checks with our staff around the vision, mission and values. This included over 110 members of staff, 9 station visits, covering 11 watches, 2 corporate groups and individual discussions with executive leaders. In January, we then launched our culture statement. We'd covered this with middle leaders already in the previous sessions. It was released to our internal staff and the public with commitments from our ELT, SLT around how we would deliver and embed the core code of ethics. We then completed further testing of these areas, including the vision, mission and values, and covering an additional 11 sessions and 56 members of staff. Following this going to the culture board with commissioners, we then started additional engagement. We completed another 12 face-to-face sessions, including 91 members of staff. And then we invited in an independent company that will support with the embedding of our vision, mission and values. They completed 5 face-to-face sessions with teams, including middle managers, covering 115 people. They asked them around how we would embed these areas into the organisation further. They sought their feedback. They asked them directly what the barriers to this could be and sought further opportunities. On the back of that, we completed an additional 5 online sessions that were available to all staff, and we released an all staff email which was accompanied with a chief's video, including the vision, mission and values, and then a service survey on whether that could be completed or not. So we break this down into 3 phases. This includes the first one, initial preliminary investigation, working with our staff on what our culture is and talking around the core code of ethics, 4 dedicated middle leader sessions, 4 transformation roadshows, work on HMIC self-assessment, and this was followed by the middle leaders engagement sessions and then additional face-to-face sessions totaling 33 and our video and survey. The results on the survey support the staff's wish to move forward on this. So our returns that came in yesterday had just under 300 responses. 95% of those responses said that they thought that the vision, mission and values delivered through the strategy were suitable and relevant for the service, and these are of course underpinned by the core code of ethics. The small number of people that disagreed with that provided feedback. The Chief Fire Officer has reviewed every single piece of feedback within that consultation. A few of those suggested minor amendments to the wording, and a number of others actually talked more around how we should embed it and their confidence in us doing so. Of the yes votes, 75% of those gave no comment. Out of those that left a comment, the 70 comments again have been reviewed by the Chief Fire Officer. Just under 30% of those were positive and expressed excitement and eagerness to embed these into service. 30% of them urged us to move forward at pace with embedding them into the service. 21% talked around our prioritisation and the importance of this, which re-emphasises some of the discussion that we've had. 7% gave us positive improvement, and this included changes to wording, language and additional elements for the strategy. And 19% gave us personal opinions or general comments around wider service improvement and areas that we could move forward on. So to reiterate, we are asking the commissioners to note the work that's taken place to support the embedding of the core code within the service, and that this has been the foundation of our values and wider review of our ongoing commitments to improve culture. The commissioners note the work that this has had in influencing the development of our vision, mission and values.
In addition to all the survey work and things that have been happening recently over the last 3 weeks, I've in my PO visits, I've seen just over 150 people, and in those visits, I've been delivering the strategy as well as the vision, mission, and values. I have a hands raised. You can comment about it. Do you think that that's suitable? Do you not think it's suitable? Pretty much all the hands go up. There's just the odd one which actually is quite representative of the figures that you're seeing in the survey. Now, I don't want to put that down as data to follow because the chief is there and the chief is asking a question, and that could be slightly skewed. So I wouldn't put that in the data set. But one of the big comments, and Don brought it out there, is right. Can we get on with that now? and embed it. So it reaffirms the point, let's crack on with the vision, mission and values. Vision, mission and values allows us to unlock the strategy. Let's go.
Yeah, I think it's good to get stuff off the table because
Yeah.
you know, that's part, otherwise some of these things are iterated.
Mm.
Into that. Right, anyone got any comments on that?
I know Kirsty mentioned it very, very briefly this morning, but outside feedback that we got from a colleague, Mark
Yes.
Sutherland, was new to service, really clear values, expectations, what we're about. So certainly from the trains going to the train centre, they are absolutely picking up the approach that we wanted. It was really good to hear that from somebody that's been doing an observe session.
Good, okay, yeah, agreed, thank you, Dominic. Gabrielle.
Yeah, so the next report is just for information only, and it's the calendar of committee date for this financial year. We must give notice to members of the public for the dates and times for our meetings. That's in accordance with our constitution and access to information rules. They are given in the summons to every meeting, but we like to give everyone sort of a forward look for the year of the calendar. So that's what you'll see at appendix 1, and that's it really.
Right, our next meeting is April the.
The next meeting for Board of Commissioners will be in May. It's May the 30th.
May I just make one comment about this? There are dates with a beautiful colour coded chart in there. Can I please urge everybody to keep to the timelines, because what happens, and Scott is there, the number of times Scott comes to me and say, I'm sorry, that one's late. And if you are a day late with a paper, it has a knock-on impact on everybody. And the point about that is it means that people further down the chain can't make substantive comment about things. You're sort of a little bit handcuffed into agreeing it, or actually just turning it off. And then we have to wait a long time for the paper to come. So please look at those dates, get them in your diary, and make sure that your paper is ready, ideally earlier than the final deadline.
Yeah, and I'm not saying we've done make a decision today, but we could be very robust around papers in by that date. If they're not submitted, they get pulled from the agenda, and the individuals are explaining why they haven't been, why they're not there. So
I would welcome that, just as there's a line in the sand. The other thing though as well is we've got to be really careful about what is necessarily a paper you put forward, and in some of the interactions that we have with the commissioners, things don't necessarily require a full paper, because we need to reduce the amount of people who are just being churned out, because I've got people who are completely handcuffed in terms of time.
Agreed.
Normally though, the commissioner, whoever, would be having a discussion with Chief as to what are the papers that are going to be coming forward. That then makes it forward to the so we can proactively work together. So that would be good.
But, you know, a combination of those factors have meant that, you know, we have had things that have been late or then not appearing, and, you know, with the timetable, that there is no excuse.
Are we saying that papers not there by the day gets full?
Are we all happy with that as a
Yes.
Yeah, we
SLT combo here?
Yeah.
Happy?
You've given them that prior warning that, you know, we've moved the goalposts previously. I think a year later, we need to just put that right down.
Lisa?
Just consider statutory reports.
Yes,
Yeah, so good communication is a key here, isn't it?
yeah, statutory or by very nature.
Some things are late because of getting statutory information. I think that notwithstanding, that's the other stuff.
Yeah, I just want to provide reassurance as well that in terms of the statutory deadlines for making reports available, they've always been met. I think it's more of our internal mechanisms for proofreading and checking and collation. But I think where they've slipped, so I completely agree with the Chief Fire Officer. That's an in-house issue of making sure that everybody adheres to the in-house mechanisms we have, but the public papers have always.
We've signed up a number of reports today on 28, which are due for public publication on the 31st. So we leave ourselves no wiggle room. That degree, yeah, right up against it. Maybe just a thing to maybe think through in terms of the running order there. Right, okay, moving on then with the next forward work programs.
Yeah, so this is obviously the last meeting of the 24-25 calendar year, so this kind of builds a close to these board of commissioner meetings. There'll be a new forward work programme then for the May onwards meetings.
New municipal year.
Yes.
That concludes your final contribution to this panel.
Nice.
Just one last thing before we wrap up. In regards to meetings, I noticed that we had a meeting at the people committee, but loads of apologies for lots of very good reasons, no deputies. So and it's about making sure the organisation is represented at those meetings. Otherwise, we're going to say, for example, I'll say, we didn't know anything about it. So if you're not coming, send a deputy. If you don't need to send a deputy or you're not coming, then why are you at that meeting? Just we get the attendance where it should be. Okay, thank you. Anything else? Around the table? No. Nothing done. No. Okay, great. Meeting closed. Finished. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
So the afternoon is.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, apart from pneumonia, could someone in that, it's either poorly